Half a day. Welcome to the University of Guam Press's Creative Conversations series. Guahusi Victoria Lola Leon Guerrero, and I am the Interim Director of Publishing at the University of Guam Press. For those who don't know much about us, UOG Press was revived about 6 years ago with the goal of advancing regional scholarship, developing cultural literacy, and expanding accessibility to knowledge about Micronesia by providing high-quality, peer-reviewed publishing services. We have a wonderful collection of local literature, children's books, and academic publications, which can all be found on our website, uogpress.com. UOG Press really believes that publishing should be a community endeavor. All of our books come from our community, we're inspired by our community, or we're made to fulfill specific needs our community expressed in terms of literature. And especially the way that we see we can do this best is by supporting a community of writers. Guahan and Micronesia have an incredibly talented pool of artists and writers who have really made UOG Press publications extra special for our people. We support a community of writers through what we call the Mañe'lon y Mantitige Writers Fellowship. Mañe'lon y Mantitige means siblings who write together. And that's really how we see it, that we're like a family, just supporting each other, giving each other feedback on our writing, and helping to bring this writing to life as publications that can be shared. So this includes peer review writing workshops that happen every 2 weeks. We had an extensive writing retreat where people were able to really work on their larger manuscripts, revise them, and prepare them to submit to UOG Press for publication. And also through conversations like the one we're going to have today. So we started our Creative Conversation series with a very generous grant from the Guam Economic Development Authority, which finished last year, but we decided this is something that's just so cool, we want to keep doing it. And so what it is that we invite a published author or artist and, to have a conversation with members of our fellowship and, just ask anything they want and, really get to know the writer, and also more importantly, kind of understanding the writing process and how to get to the goal of publishing. And so I'm really excited about our special guest today. He was my high school classmate, someone I'm incredibly proud of and honored to know, but I will allow our fellowship director, Via DeFont, to introduce him. Via DeFont is also our marketing communications coordinator, and she works closely with our fellows. And so half a day, and welcome, Via.
Thank you so much, Lola. Half a day, everyone. We're all really honored here to be joined by Pep Borja, who is the author of Dry Nights. And Dry Nights is a collection of poems that bravely navigate the complex spaces of intimacy, addiction, love, and suicide, among a lot of other emotions. While this is Pep's debut book, he's no stranger to the publishing world, and his work has been published by the University of Hawaii Press, Achoti Press, the Kartika Review, the Yellow Medicine Review, and our very own Storyboard. So, good job, Pep. So before we begin, I would like to read a couple quick excerpts of a book review published in PDN, written by Leilani Lucas, titled Dry Nights, Decolonizing Sexuality. So Leilani writes, "For Borja, the bodies are not crashing against each other. Instead, they sigh and melt into their sensations." She also writes, "Borja treats love and lust as decolonization, free from the trappings of respectability. Sexuality and desire is often loaded with guilt and treated like something that should be hidden away in the dark. But instead, Borja shines light on it and treats it as a human emotion that can be quite beautiful. There is no stigma towards it, and Borja shows how pure this desire can be, rather than something sinful and dirty. There is a certain raw bloodletting required to be open and vulnerable, and it's this humility and acceptance of how all-consuming Borja's feelings are that make him feel relatable." So that was a beautiful review done of this beautiful book, and don't be fooled by its palm-sized, but how small it is, because the breadth of emotion and imagery in it is just so profound. So thank you so much, Pep, for being here. And if you wanted to start off with a few words or share anything?
Hi, Via. Hi. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me on. Really excited to answer any questions and just talk with the other fellows about writing and the process and stuff like that.
Awesome. Maybe if you're open to it, you can share a poem to get us started, just to give our audience and our Mañelu a sense of the work.
Sure. All right, let me just pull it up.
So while Pep pulls up the book, I'll just share a little bit about Dry Nights. So Dry Nights is incredibly special because it features Pep's writing, which is super layered and beautiful and artistic, and really it's something you can keep returning to. But it also features some really talented artists. So Constance Sartor did the illustrations. So throughout the book, there's beautiful illustrations. And then our cover collage was a collaboration between Tanya McD and Uric Pataxel, and it features a beautiful collage that is meant to accompany a poem called Billy, which is one of my favorite pieces in the collection. Also really exciting is that, with the pandemic, UOG Press really had to think about how do we launch books in new ways. And so we wanted to kind of celebrate this book and the depth of this book in the art of film. And so we're working with the incredibly talented local filmmaker, Brian Muña, to produce Dry Nights, the short film. And so on our social media pages, you'll see we have a little teaser trailer, but we did a talent call and all these incredibly talented local actors auditioned. And so we have a beautiful cast, including high school students from GW's drama class. And so please stay tuned because Dry Nights has only really gotten started, and we hope to launch this film next month at Tango Theaters. So really, really, tune into our social media, and you don't want to miss it. So Pep, you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, guys. Thanks for allowing me to share this poem. This one's called Billy. I heard in the halls that you came in around 80, and it was the type of ruthless rabble the Veronicas preached to spread their rap, as though the sardines in those jeans were the cafeteria's most succulent. You never added to anything raw, but when you walked in tomorrow, third day of your first year, I knew you without knowing, and you knew I knew it. From that point on, the language in class was old and easy, and it felt like we'd speak in that sweet tongue forever. When I look back, I see hazy cuts of you in the back seat, and you're always 15 and smiling with the soft black bob that none of them wore, and the bangs to your cheeks held just above the ear with the bright blue clips you bought at the school, the townhouse. You were always in bloom that way. I recall the verse between us sweet. You showed me the branches they stripped, and I showed you mine, back and forth, ours tangled and twisted, confused and sad. And in our rhyme, we sang a storm that flooded the hallways and drowned out the drone. For a moment, we were branching past the front gate, the parapro too slow to contain our outward drizzle. If the September rains never came to wash away the summer, we might have made it to my car, parked across the winter's distant street. It's still there, under the petrified banyan, the passenger seat of my heart, always empty for you. It was December when you last called. You a second year, me a fourth. I was out somewhere, wasting time away, and now that line rings lonely forever. Days later, the whispers came back, but all I could see were brown bruises where the scarf burned your neck. At your viewing, I couldn't come to your casket. My shame kept me stained in black on a pew in the back, and I died inside as the Veronicas walked by. Thank you.
Wow, thank you, Pep. Every time I hear that poem, it just hits me in a different way. So thank you so much for writing it and sharing it. And so without further ado, I'd like to welcome our Mañelu, who have prepared questions, but really just, we're just gonna have a conversation, and we're gonna start with our first Mañelu, who will be asking a question today, is Johanna Salinas. Johanna is currently a reading teacher for the Guam Department of Education and has been an active participant in our Mañe'lon Mantitige Fellowship from the beginning. Hoffadain, and welcome, Johanna.
Half a day, everyone. Hello, Pep. Hello, Facebook, all the viewers and whatnot. Okay, so my first question for you. I understand that you wrote this book about different women in your life, like women you've encountered, women you've loved, and even women who've taught you important life lessons. So what made you choose this theme of dry nights?
Hi, Joanna. Thank you. Thank you for that question. I think, yeah, like for most readers, it's kind of easy to go through the book and come out with the idea that the poems are about one specific person, and I can understand that. But the poems are actually not about one specific person. They're like you said, about these different people that have come into my life and have had a profound effect on me. And I think in writing about them, I wanted to capture what it was like to be close to them. So, I really used a lot of my intimate and personal experiences to kind of flesh that out. And like for me, I think that whenever I get close to someone, it's always an amazing feeling, but it's always going to affect me in ways, that are altogether happy and sad and exciting and in many ways sorrowful too. And I think that all those feelings taken together kind of helped me to really appreciate these kind of bonds and these experiences that I've had, and truly like cherish it.
Thank you for that, Pep.
Thank you for the question, Johanna.
I think that always makes me think about how people say that if a writer falls in love with you, or if you make a profound impact on a writer, that you're kind of immortalized through their words. And so I think that's a very beautiful way that you honor these people in your life, or immortalize them, so to say. So up next, we have Joseph Titano, who is a reporter on government and politics at the Pacific Daily News and another active participant in the writing group. So Joe, if you have a question.
Sure, yeah. Hey, everybody. Thanks, Pep, for answering our questions this morning. I'm kind of, one kind of thing that stuck out to me as I was reading through it, those timestamps. You got 12 a.m., 2 a.m., 4 a.m., and how you kind of break up some of the different pieces in there. Can you speak a little about that? Like, what is that? What does that mean? What does that represent?
Hey Joe, nice to meet you, man. Thanks for that question. So I think the reason why I kind of broke the poem up into these sections of the night is because I wanted to kind of capture and like sort of map out using the night as a metaphor for how I experience these bonds and with these people. So like at the beginning of the night, the poems in there are all about you know, the excitement of meeting someone and like kind of growing this bond with them, you know. And then the poems in the middle part of the book are kind of expression of where you start to realize that those feelings aren't gonna last forever, you know, and it'll inevitably come to an end. And then the last part of the book, 4 a.m., the last part of the night, that's kind of where I try to like really reflect upon them, you know, and sort of like realize how the good parts and the bad parts of that experience have made those things really, really valuable, you know, and how they mean a lot more in their impermanence, so to speak.
Yeah, you know, sometimes you stay out too late and the party goes on for too long.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the first thing I thought of. Thanks for that answer.
Thank you, Tibra. Thank you for the question.
Yeah, I think that's powerful too, that you that kind of the way these timestamps like function as a metaphor. And just really for me, that's one of the most interesting parts of the book, is that there's so many metaphors that even the metaphor becomes a metaphor for a metaphor, like as you just kind of unpacked. And so that's kind of what's really fun, is that there are things that have such deep meaning, at least to me as a reader. And I'm not even sure if that's what you may have intended as a writer, but to me, that's what makes the writing sing, is the fact that there are so many ways you can look at the lines and apply them to different situations, especially of like grief and loss and regret, right? And then there's these beautiful metaphors that just capture our island, right? And capture what it's like to fall in love here specifically. So yeah, I'm glad we got to talk about that, because I think that's one of the most powerful things that you do, is your use of metaphor. All right. So next up, we have Esther Sablan. Hoffadain, welcome, Esther. Esther is a mother, engineer, veteran, and history fan who lives and works in Guahan. Hoffadain, Esther, thank you for joining us.
Hi, everybody. Sorry for being late. I was actually writing and I totally lost track of time. So I was deep in a paragraph. I'm sorry that I didn't hear the prior questions, but the questions I had for Pep is basically about your editing and your selection process. So in no particular order, you know, did you work with an editor? And I know the answer to that. So I guess the real question is, you know, how did that process work for you as a poet? And the second question was, you know, how did you go about selecting which poems to actually put in? And, you know, the ones that didn't make it, why? That's my question.
Hi, Esther. Good morning. Thanks for the question. So for putting the book together, I actually got to work with Verna Zafra, who is an amazing poet, and she really did a lot to help me sort of like clean up and organize the poems in the book. And without her help, I really don't think I would have been able to get the work necessary done to get it, you know, into state where it was ready to be published. Because of the pandemic, we were forced to do most of the editing work and the revisions through Zoom. So you know, I would send her pieces, and then she would send me back advice and suggestions on certain revisions, and then I would work on them for about a week, and then send it back to her for her review. And we did this about 4 or 5 times before we had something that, you know, we both felt was ready for publication. As far as revising goes, I personally found that to be one of the hardest parts of getting this done, and I think that's because I had written many of the poems a long while before they were actually submitted and accepted for publication. And so I kind of found it hard to like sort of go back and get myself into a headspace where I could make the necessary changes. And I think that's because in many ways, like I myself as a person, you know, had grown in that amount of time from when I wrote them until I submitted them for publication and revision and stuff like that. It was kind of sort of like, you know, going back in a time machine and revisiting those emotions, you know, that inspired the poems. And because of that time frame, it was really hard for me to, you know, be able to like sort of relive those emotions and those feelings, and I get myself to a place where I could revise accordingly. Verna was really hard on me about that because there were a couple of times where I would like ghost her and just skip out. But you know, she with her help, I was really able to sort of discover the importance of the revision process. And yeah, for that, I'm really thankful to her.
Thanks, Pep. Awesome.
Thank you too.
Thanks for that question, Esther. I think that that's also another thing, you know, people always see the final product, but they don't really see what goes on behind the scenes and kind of that struggle, or not struggle, but the challenges that the writer goes through in revisiting and revising their work. So that was a great response, Pep. Thank you. So next, I'd like to introduce Megan, who is an English teacher at Southern High School and another active participant in our writing groups. So Megan, if you have any questions.
Hoffadain, thank you for joining us here today. We met at the book launch, and I'm just happy. I also got myself a copy, and he wrote in it. And first, I wanted to put it in my classroom, but then when I was reading through it, I'm like, I don't know if that's the best thing right now. Maybe a different grade level because I teach freshmen, but we'll see how that goes. Maybe one or two, but you know, more the you know what I mean. So my first question is, how would you describe writing intimacy in this way? Because you do it so tastefully, and it's something that I wouldn't be I wouldn't censor it. Obviously, when you're working with your editor, right, there are probably things that you had to revise that you know, in terms of like writing intimacy. What does that feel like? How do you get the readers to feel that way without making it like, oh, I think this needs to be censored or whatnot? So if you could describe how your writing process with that would be.
Hi, Megan. Nice to see you again. Thank you for the question. So when I started writing these poems, you know, about these intimate and sort of personal subjects, I think one of the hardest things for me to do was to actually sort of find the courage to open myself up. I think it's really hard to express these type of things, you know, and to sort of make yourself vulnerable in this way. But I think that if you really want to do it, you know, truthfully and honestly, you really have to be brave, and you have to be willing to accept the consequences of putting yourself out there. And so I think that it's important, you know, to just be willing to take those risks and be willing to share those types of feelings, because you know, people will relate to that sort of vulnerability, and you know, those are things that they can empathize with. But yeah, for me, that was one of the hardest parts of trying to write these types of things, was just having the courage to open myself up. As far as, you know, writing about sensuality and stuff like that, and keeping it tasteful, I found that what helped me was to kind of put the focus on the emotions that these types of experiences made me feel, as opposed to like the, you know, the act itself. I think it's in the emotions where the audience can kind of relate to and appreciate what you're trying to express. I also found that it helps to engage the audience's imagination by using suggestion as opposed to like direct description, as well as trying to avoid cliche. And I think, doing those types of things kind of helps to make the writing a lot more respectful and loving and authentic.
Awesome. Thank you. This is actually a great segue into what I had wanted to ask or talk with you a little bit more about today. So, yeah, definitely maybe not the appropriate book for high school, depending. Some high school students are experiencing these things, and this might give them some tools about seeing beyond just the physical. But I do remember when I had, we were promoting the book in the media when it was launching, and I had sent it to Chris Malafunction, and the first thing he wrote back is like, "Victoria, this is erotica." So, which to me was one of the really exciting things about publishing this book, is that there's a lot of taboo around sex and sexuality in our community. And oftentimes we only hear about sex, in a public way, if it's dealing with sexual abuse or violence, right? We don't really celebrate sex as something that can be healthy or positive. Or also very connected, as Pep accurately pointed out, to deeper emotions and connections to people. And I think having literature that does that honestly is something we haven't had. And so it's really exciting that you've done this and you've put yourself out there in this way, because the hope is that others can feel safe to be honest in their writing. But you're not only honest about your sexuality, you're also very honest about very real struggles that I think a lot of people in our community go through, struggles with drug and alcohol abuse, struggles with suicide ideation, shame. These are things that oftentimes people deal with alone and don't have an outlet for expression. And if they do, they would never share it because Guam is so small. And, this is something I think all of us as writers grapple with, right? How much of our work, even in fiction, can we put out without people thinking that it's like we're sharing the deepest family secrets? I think here, even more so than in larger communities, it's very scary to be a writer writing about things that need to be read about, right? And so it's brave to do so. But sometimes writers live in exile. They can't live in their community once they've written about them, because they either get attacked or they do get shamed, or, people turn away from them. And so, I wanted to hear, what have some of the reactions been since the book has come out, and what made it worth it for you? Putting your soul out there on paper, what made it worth it for you to do that? And why should others be brave as well?
Thank you for that, Victoria. Yeah, it can be really frightening to like open yourself up and be willing to talk about these things that, we really are uncomfortable discussing and stuff. And, you're always going to be scared about how people will interpret and react to this sort of writing. But in my personal experience, going through all this, I found that the people close to me have found an appreciation for the way in which I've kind of opened up, and shared these experiences and this work. And I think that when you're able to make yourself vulnerable and you're able to share these deep and profound experiences and feelings with other people, it kind of stirs these feelings of empathy and compassion in them. And in that way, they're able to sort of connect with you. So yeah, the response and the feedback I've gotten from my friends and my family has been nothing but positive, and they have really, told me they're proud of me for just being brave enough to put this kind of stuff out there. And yeah, I'm really thankful for that.
That's awesome. I think one of the things that I always think about in terms of, being vulnerable and or giving parts of yourself to, people who largely don't know you, is how someone who doesn't know you can relate to your words. And I just think back to the times where I was going through a really hard time. And, it's different when you're reading someone's words versus talking to someone who knows you. There's benefits to both, but I think there's a certain comfort where there's people who you don't know kind of sharing the same emotions that you have. And in some ways, it makes it feel more valid because they're not colored by their bias or perception of you. So you know that what they're saying is authentic. So thank you for being so brave, Pep. I actually have my own question, and it's kind of more to do with your choice as the author to not use the name that you usually published with. And I was wondering if you felt like you ceded a part of your identity or ownership of your pieces in that choice, and if you maybe wish that you had used your usual publishing name, which I won't out here, but if you want to, feel free to.
Thank you for that, Via. To be honest, when we were starting this whole thing, I didn't want to use the name I use now, Pep, which is Pep is the name that my family calls me and stuff. So I didn't want to use my name at all. I tried to ask Victoria if I could use a pseudonym because I was really scared, about putting this stuff out there. So yeah, but she did a lot to help me be brave, and she helped me to decide that I should use my name. But no, I have no regrets of not using my government name, my legal name. No regrets at all.
Yeah, it was fun because at first I was like, okay, I want to respect your creative freedom and your desire to use a pen name. But then the way I saw it was, I really think you're an inspiration, and that if you had a pen name, the world wouldn't be able to see you and who you are. And, I think there are some poets and writers that are so easily recognizable in the community that have really put themselves out there, and it's amazing, right? And then there are others like yourself who are much more quiet about it, right? That most people around you don't realize this is a huge part of your identity. And so it was almost like I wanted you to come out of the writing closet, so to speak, because I just believed that the book itself was so powerful that you should be proud of it. But also, I really hope that other men like yourself, especially Chamorro men who often don't feel like they can express emotion, will see what you have done and find in it a tool, right, to help them. And so that was the biggest reason I was really, really glad you agreed to at least go by Pep Borja, because, that's something you can come out and answer questions as Pep. So thank you for letting me convince you.
Thank you too. Thank you for helping me find my courage.
Yeah, for sure. So we've definitely we have time for just one more round of questions. And so Joe has another question. Hoffadain, welcome back, Joe.
Yeah, Pep, it's interesting. You said you wrote this over kind of a long period of time. I'm wondering how long, but you kind of hit a lot of the same, I think Megan used the word intimate, and it's sort of intimate throughout, this constant arc, but it touches upon, different places. It's kind of sensual at times. Sometimes it's more pained, and it's a little, it can be a little grimy sometimes too, right? Because intimacy can be grimy at points. And so I'm wondering, kind of through the process as you were writing this, like, did you have one thing in mind? Is this just sort of did you have, were you at, what was it, this is out on your, and it sort of, even how does that kind of come together for you? What have you sort of realized?
Man, I'm sorry. I didn't get the last part of the question. I'm so sorry, dude.
Yeah, no, I got that little, your internet was unstable thing at the end. I was like, oh no. Yeah, but I was wondering, kind of like what that process looked like, and how, whether you had one thing in mind, if this is just, you putting things together that, you had written that were kind of at the top of your head, and as you sort of reflected over it, right? Now that you have this piece together, and I'm sure reflection was a big part of that process, like how does that kind of change your view of just those emotions, and how you go through them and just the work?
I think, thank you for the question, brother. But yeah, I think that when I set out to write this, I very wanted, or I was pretty much writing for myself, man, and for my own catharsis. Um, when I started, the first poem, and just started going on, I had no intention of ever getting any of these things published, and so just going off of that sort of need to write, I was able to come up with like 30 something poems, um, and um, and it was really like kind of a therapeutic experience for me, just getting that all together, and like sort of on a lark, I sent them in to UOG Press, and I had, man, I didn't think they would be published at all. A lot of the stuff that gets put out, here on Guam and in the region tends to deal with serious issues, like cultural identity and political status and stuff like that. And my poems were, in my view, they were essentially like love poems, So I didn't think they would be taken seriously. But I was really surprised to discover, that there were writers and readers who could appreciate this type of work, and this type of poetry. And it really made me feel good, that people could relate to this type of thing.
Yeah, and not to put you on the spot, but as I was reading through it, I kind of thought to myself, like, oh, this kind of looks like something I would, I've sent out to, a girl I might have known at one point in time. How many of the kind of the subjects in the poems have they had a chance to read some of this, maybe before it even got to the book? Just wondering.
Man, no. I've never sent this out to any of the people that I'm writing about, and I don't want to like point it out, like send the book to them and say, here, this is about you, because in many ways, man, I was writing for me, for myself, and I wrote to help myself deal with the kind of the gravity and the significance of these experiences I've had.
Hey, well, I'm glad you put it together and saw the light of day. Pretty sweet, bro.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, brother.
Yeah, I like what you said there, Pep, about how you're writing for yourself, because I think a lot of times people might speculate like, oh, are you not over this person, or why are you still on like talking about these topics? But writing is a catharsis. So Megan, you had a question?
I actually had more of a comment, and it was when you were saying that that usually when we pick up a book, it's more about like the cultural identity and stuff like that. And while that is true, I also think that the way you frame it also brings out a different aspect of identity, where a lot of us go through this being like all the taboo with how do I react to this, how do I do this, and for you to kind of like shine that light there, and just say it's okay to be like this, right? I think that does wonders for a lot of people who open that book and kind of like get inspired by it and feel like they can really connect to it, because then you're opening a bigger spectrum for people to be comfortable with who they are, and they're part of that identity aspect of their lives.
Yeah, thank you for that, Megan. For sure, it's, I think, being a male, a tomorrow male here on Guam, there's this sort of masculinity in our culture that kind of makes us want to feel, that we can't be sensitive to these types of feelings and these types of emotions. And so when actually when I told Lola that I wanted to use a pen name, one of the things she said to me was, you know, this work can inspire others, you know, like you who want to express these sort of things, and it kind of make them be brave, you know, and give them the courage to do that. And when she mentioned that to me, you know, that kind of made me want to be brave, you know, and be willing to put myself out there as to, and you know, try to show others like that you know, it's okay to want to express these things and to write about these sorts of things.
Yeah, that was one of the things I loved about Leilani's review. So just a little bit of background. UOG Press recently started a monthly Pacific literature book review in PDN, and we did a call for reviewers. And Leilani was someone who responded, who like lives in Washington. Like she's not Chamorro at all. Like she's, I believe she's from Hawaii, or she's like half Black, half Hawaiian, if I'm not mistaken. And she, like, her friend who knew she loved books just sent her our post, and she reached out to us. So like zero context of like kind of our daily lived experience, and read this book, and her review was so powerful because she saw it as an act of decolonized sexuality, which was really cool, you know, because even, and this is what I always tell people, writing in and of itself is a political act. So even if you're not writing political content, just taking that step and putting yourself out there and changing the way people see things is very much an act of decolonization. And what she saw in your poetry in terms of how it even presented women, right, was very different even from other male authors. So that Chamorro lens is relevant and important. And I think that this does bring us to another sort of way of, you know, decolonizing. Is like, you don't have to write about it, but you know, the way you see the world, the way you see love, the way you see bodies, the way you see yourself, is unlike anybody else, and it should be, you know. And so, and be proud of that and own that. But also, you have written, you know, political poetry. Like, you know, the first time I met Pep as a writer, right? Because I had known him in high school, was he had submitted poetry for Storyboard, and I was the editor of Storyboard, and I had really loved these poems, but there's a lot of Joseph Borjas on Guam. I had no idea. So I read it and I was like, oh, wow. Like, it was about cultural identity, and decolonization was like very prevalent, right? Political, you know, like it was very political. And so when he came to the launch, I was like, oh, how did you hear about this? And he's like, oh, I'm in the book. And I was like, do you want to read? And he's like, no. But I was just like really excited because, you know, to kind of, again, like, you know, we know people our whole lives, and then we see them in a new context through their writing is also very, very exciting. And so then again, imagine my surprise several years later when Pep turns in a manuscript that is completely different from the poetry that he had in Storyboard. It was just what I think, for me as a writer, it just showed me what's even possible with me, that we don't have to box ourselves in as any kind of one writer, but just, you know, write for yourselves, get what's in your heart on the page, and who knows where it'll go, right? And so another writer who I think does that a lot is Johanna. You have very honest writing, and she has another question for you.
Hi, thank you for that comment, Lola. Okay, so Pep, I guess just looking at your table of contents with all these timestamps and whatnot, and knowing how you're like a bar guy, Mr. Horse and Cow, my question for you is, when is your favorite time and place to write?
Why you gotta out me like that, Joanna? Thank you for the question. I appreciate it. For me, I think that, like, to get in a headspace where I'm really able to write effectively, I sort of have to really like really dive deep into myself, and get myself into a place where I'm able to really reflect upon and sort of confront, the feelings and the things I want to express. And so to be able to do that, I find that that writing late at night, like really late at night, works the best for me. There's something about the solitude and like sort of the loneliness of the night that I think really helps me to sort of focus and write about the things I want to write about.
And where's your favorite place to write?
At home would be the favorite for me. Yeah, at home, it's comfortable and stuff. Yeah.
Okay, there. I thought you would be Mr. Mysterious in the dark spot of the bar. Okay, thanks for that.
Thank you too, Joanna. Appreciate it.
And it's always fun to see like where different writers prefer to kind of plant themselves and just let loose with all everything that they want to write about, because it could be a bar, it could be your house, but yeah, you still produce something beautiful. So I believe Esther has another question.
Hi again, Pep. Yeah, I was just curious what you learned about the publishing process in putting the book out. So you started with a small paperback, right? And how it was put together. And will it go to an ebook? Will it go to an audiobook? That would be great, by the way. But yeah, just curious what you learned.
And so I actually learned a lot going through the process. When I submitted it and it got accepted, I didn't think that I would have to like do stuff like this, and like do interviews and stuff like that. But going through it, man, I've actually met a lot of amazing creative people, and I've gotten to do things like, create a short film, and do readings and stuff like that. So it's really been an awesome experience, and I'm really grateful for all the people I've met in this process, and even just being able to join the group that we're in. Before all this, I would have never had the opportunity to meet with people like that every week and to, discuss writing and stuff like that. I was never a part of a community like that. And so, just going through all this has, opened up a lot of things I didn't have before, as far as writing and being creative and stuff like that. And I'm very grateful for that.
Well, I really appreciate the community as well, too. And I hope that it helps. Once you have the time and the place to write, you have a community as well that helps you write, right? And hopefully you find it as beneficial as we do. So thanks for being a part of it. I love you you're in my group, so I feel very
fortunate. It's amazing. I look forward to every other Thursday.
Awesome. So what Pep and Esther are talking about is what I had mentioned earlier, that our Mañe'lon y Mantitige Fellowship has peer review writing workshops. And so if you are a writer and you need a writing community and you would love to join one of these workshop groups, please don't hesitate to contact us. We are easily found at UOG Press at triton.uog.edu. So just email us via our wonderful fellowship coordinator. Will put you on a waiting list as soon as a spot opens in one of our writing groups. We're always excited to support writers. If you're interested in submitting a manuscript, just as Pep described, we have an open call for manuscript submissions. If you go to our UOG website, which is just uog.edu/UOG Press, our submission guidelines are there. They're very clear. If you can't find it there and you want to email us, please do. Again, at UOG Press at triton.uog.edu. And all of of our books can easily be purchased on our e-commerce site, which is just uogpress.com. And uogpress.com also will direct you to the submission guidelines. So very easy to remember. We have very, very active social media pages. You just find us UOG Press on Instagram or Facebook with all the updates on our books and our soon to be released short film Dry Nights. But I just want to say thank you to our Mañelu for being with us today and for always participating so wonderfully in these creative conversations, and most especially to Pep. Thank you for your work, your wisdom, and your time today. I just look forward to more writing from you and from everybody we heard from today. Thank you, Via, for organizing this incredible conversation, and thank you to those who tuned in. We hope to see you again in a month when we will have another creative conversation for you. Enjoy the rest of the weekend. Esther, adios.
Adios.